It's HPR, All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Today we have a legendary guitar player joining us at the Blue Note through Sunday, and known not just for his playing, but thanks to that and perhaps growing up in the LA area, also as a major session guy. He's done lots of them, hundreds, perhaps thousands of sessions. It's Larry Carlton, and we're going to explore some of the highlights as we welcome him back to the show right now. Hey, brother, you there?
Yeah, man, how are you?
I'm good, and hoping you are too. Thanks for doing this.
Cool, yeah, pleasure.
Detail the band that you're bringing with you, which I think includes a family member, yeah?
Travis can't make it.
Oh.
Darn it.
Travis is Larry's son, often plays bass with him. So tell us who you're bringing instead.
Yeah, bass player Andy Hess. Keyboards, it's Mark Stevens. And the drummer has been with me, off and on for the last 12 years. He and Travis were really good friends, and they were both 22 years old when they started playing with me. His name is Gene Coy. 3 of the albums that Gene played on last year just won Grammys.
Looks like you got some good accompaniment, as usual, Mr. Carlton.
Always. Yeah.
I know that, brother. You're one of these cats who really, some people have just been attached to something through most of their life, and I would say starting at 6 years old would rank you as most of your life. How does one get onto a guitar at such a young age, which was, for those keeping track, 1954?
Yeah, there was an old acoustic guitar at my grandmother's house, and my mom played guitar when she was a teenager back in Oklahoma, and her dad played fiddle. So there was a little bit of musicality in the genes. My parents told me I was just fascinated with the guitar at age 4, and they told me as soon as you're big enough to hold it, you can start taking lessons.
Which was 6, I guess?
So about 6.5, I started taking guitar lessons, and I've been very blessed. It's the only thing I've ever done. I've never had another kind of job except a musician.
Where'd you go to college?
2 years to Harbor Junior College in San Pedro, and then 1 year to Long Beach State College, music major. Did
that come to be a degree of some kind?
No, I didn't go the 4th year. I was turning down, honestly, so much work to stay in college that the day I knew I could quit college, I did and started working.
So I know it's crazy stuff. Before we get to that exciting period, you paint that middle picture because people are going, well, what happens from 6 to there?
My parents never had to force me to practice, even though as a child, of course, it's like, have you practiced your lesson today? But never did they have to threaten me or anything. So yeah, lessons starting at age 6.5. By 9, I was doing little talent shows with the students from the Guitar Center where I took lessons. By 12, my mom was shuttling me around to different talent shows. So I got a lot of experience playing in front of people at a very young age. When I was 14, I was playing Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon at a supper club with musicians that were in their 20s. And the reason I remember is because we celebrated my 15th birthday at the club.
And that would have been first kind of pro experience, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Playing with older musicians, pop music of the time.
You determined when you had enough gigs that you could make that work instead of school, you would blow out and do that. What were those kind of gigs that were just lining up to be so frequent?
A lot of demo sessions because I was still 19 or 20. People in the studio world were starting to call me to play on demos for publishing companies. But also I had my own groups from 17 years old till I was 20 playing in clubs. So I was playing all the time. The summer before my senior year in high school, I went to Vegas and played 56 days straight at the Mint. I was with a group that opened the Mint Lounge in Vegas. And then, the demo things, as soon as I started getting calls for demos for publishing companies, from there it was just word of mouth. Hey, there's this young guy that's playing, so if you can't get who you want, try this guy.
Right. Oh, it was a good alternative. I love the way you set that up. And your first record, you're 20 years old. It's 1968, and that leads you to doing jingle sessions for Ford?
Yeah, man. The leader of the jingle group, he had heard about me, knew I could sing some background parts, and I could play. So, they offered me the gig with the Ford group for all summer, went around and did corporate gigs for Ford. But I played on the jingles along with the heavyweight session guys, another initiation into the session world.
And did you get yourself a Mustang, or how did that work out on the ride?
Yeah, they gave us a car for 2 years. But we had to give it back.
Right. Oh, that's cool. So that's how that worked, huh? Was it a Mustang, in fact?
It was. 428 Mustang.
Look at you, man. Love it.
I know.
Larry's been fortunate to have parlayed his talent into working with all kinds of names. I'm just going to dial in on a handful of them. John Lennon's a really big name. Talk about how that came to be.
Well, I didn't tell this story until after John Lennon passed away. But I was called for 5 nights of recording, and Phil Spector was producing John Lennon. Well, it was me and Leon Russell and a whole bunch of other guys. And the session was so loose, John didn't show up for 4 hours after we were supposed to start. And so the bottom line was I drove Leon Russell back to his hotel after the first night of session. I said, man, that was a drag, just sitting around waiting. And then John was drunk. And Leon said, you kidding me? I'm back to Tulsa in the morning. So I got home and called Phil Spector's office and just canceled the rest of the week. It was not a pleasant experience. It was in a bad time for John. So I just took the week off.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, being just a session guy, we never know who we're going to get called for. So
right.
Probably Sammy Davis Jr. was being produced by Jimmy Bowen, I would think. And I did 90% of the work that Jimmy produced. So yeah, I did him. I did Dean Martin, I think.
At that point, were you just already so successful that meeting him was not a thrill, or was it something that you still were impressed by?
Oh, it was just a session for me.
Right, yeah, you're just knocking him out. How about Jerry Garcia?
Yeah, see, I didn't remember that session, but that album came out a long time after we recorded those tracks. I was surprised when I read Jerry Garcia has a new album out and Larry Carlton's on the track. It had been so long since we recorded those tracks. I had forgotten all about it. I don't know if it was him or if it was him and the producer that said, hey, let's handpick these guys.
Producer, you make a great point, has a big role in some of these too. They'll get the idea, certain people, like Michael Jackson, for example. Was that a situation where the producer maybe thought that was Quincy, I guess, looking to stick you in a certain way?
Yeah, I had done some work for Quincy over the years, and then I got a call one day from his office saying Quincy's got one song for Michael that he really would like you to come in and play on. So I did, and that was She's Out of My Life, for the Off the Wall album. You
get to record it while he's there? Was that one of those you do it separately kind of deal?
It was separate. His vocal and Greg Fillingane's keyboard part was all that I played to.
Is there like a biggest honor that comes to mind of the cats that you've gotten to cross paths with?
Well, what comes to mind first is the Crusaders. I was a fan of the Jazz Crusaders when I was 14, 15 years old. And then 7 years later or so, to be called to record with the Crusaders was definitely a highlight and a turning point in my career.
Is there a most stressful session, other than like the Lennon thing, which didn't sound very fun at all, but is there a most stressful one that you look back at? And it doesn't have to have necessarily ended bad, but it could just be a lot of intense work.
I think the most stress for me was sometimes going to a motion picture call, and the sight reading could be quite intense. My sight reading was not as good as the top guys. So I'd get to those sessions and I'd really have to concentrate because I had not been sight reading as much as everybody else. I got it done, but it was it was a little stressful.
That's a good example of one. Now on to the serious stuff. Now, what do you do with your Grammys, Larry? Where do you keep those things?
That's so funny. I feel funny saying it. They're in a box someplace in my downstairs studio. I haven't even put gold records or anything on the wall.
Just stuffed in a box somewhere. You never broke one, I'm imagining, huh?
Actually, the very first one, that was 1980, I noticed when I moved, the top had broken off. I need to get that glued back together.
Well, Russell Ferrante from the Yellow Jackets just told us the other day, great tip, if you reach out to the Grammy Foundation and tell them, they will work with you and replace it for you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because that was 1980 for Hill Street Blues with Mike Post.
And you wouldn't want to have tape on that kind of thing. Duct tape.
That's right.
It's great to get to talk to you again. It's Larry Carlton. Hugs, high fives, Some great stories.
Thanks, Dave.
Be safe, brother.
See you, buddy. Aloha, it's Larry Carlton. listening to All Things Considered with my friend Dave Lawrence.